segment. So, Trix, over to you.
Thank you, Mike. And with the advent of social media and the use of tech, exploitation of children has moved from the physical, and it's also quite prevalent today in the online or blogger spheres or online spheres. Social media is one of them. And obviously, this is what we term as online sexual child exploitation. And this is something that has necessitated the need to clamp down on some of these evils that are happening behind the screens, and of course targeting children that are often vulnerable and at a point where they cannot even express what is happening in their lives. And we are having a very well thought out panel that is going to get us up to date on what is being done to help combat this. And we have Ms. Magdalene Wanza, who's the country manager for Therese D. Homes. Is that the right pronunciation? I'm not French. And then we have Mr. Samuel Munyuwini, right? And he is the executive director, African Institute of Children's Studies, as well as Martha Sunda, executive director for Childline Kenya. Welcome to the show, ladies and gent. Now, this is a big problem right now and rarely spoken about because of its nature. It's children you're talking about who are not very outspoken, and at the same time, it's a new twist to exploitation of children sexually. I'll start with you. What is your take on that? Or rather, let us define it. What is this thing, online sexual exploitation of children?
Thank you very much. Online sexual exploitation of children involves all acts that contribute to exploitation of children sexually and with a connection with with internet. And as you say, it has been on the rise, and we've seen, and especially looking at the penetration of internet and the affordability, accessibility of smartphones, children are at risk of online sexual exploitation in Kenya. And we'll also be discussing and see how big is the situation on the issue, and looking at all the forms of online sexual exploitation, where there is the grooming of victims by predators or perpetrators, either to be abused offline or online, and also sharing of sexual abuse materials that are relating to children. We've really seen it's an issue. Yes, it's a new area in Kenya, and it's on the rise.
Yeah, because we have kids as young as 10 having cell phones, and there's internet and free Wi-Fi all over the place. So there are those forms of, sexual exploitation. You've talked about grooming. I would like to know more, your second name is quite a mouthful.
It's the easier one.
So I'll just call you Samuel. But please define to us some of the forms of sexual exploitation that take place. Perhaps start with the grooming that she has talked about. What is the grooming, sexual exploitation and grooming? Is this teaching them to be, getting them into it in a slowly by slowly?
Exactly. It's I think, Trix, we need to appreciate that while online, not everyone has a good intention, and for some reason, sex always is one area of demonstrating, how where you're demonstrating power for the other and exploiting other people. So it's really a power relation question. And so there will be people who will be very intent in being very methodical, and so planning that, I want to be able to take advantage of the most vulnerable person, being able to prepare them, to train them, to make them feel comfortable to connect with them, but really with the intent of exploiting them sexually. Yeah, and many times it could actually lead beyond just an online relation, and sometimes the child will be expected to leave. And we have real cases that have happened in recent cases of that, where children have left school to go all the way to Malindi or Mombasa from Western Kenya, so that they can, the perpetrator has, of course, an intent to exploit them. So grooming is it's a sort of
brainwash, or getting them while they're young. It's easy to manipulate their minds to fall into that trap. What are some of the other forms of,
The other that is really and growing very quickly is sexting. Basically sending text messages on phone, either WhatsApp or the traditional SMS, but really with the intent of causing sexual arousal. So this again is an area that we are seeing that is really growing. Of course, there are many other forms that we are noticing. There is also the bit where children share their videos online.
Yes, pornographic material.
Yes, so video streaming or going into a chat room and recording their videos. Sometimes with the thought to sell the material, because there's a connotation to economic exploitation that also comes with it.
Okay,
yes.
so this by video streaming, you're talking about the way your viewers, the viewers are getting us live, but this would be a child who has been, brainwashed into performing sexual acts online, sometimes just for the sake or sometimes for monetary gain.
Exactly.
And you're seeing this happening in this country. Yes.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's happening right here.
All right, Martha, give us your take on this. What are some of the ways that young people or children are being exploited sexually online?
Apart from the ones that we have spoken about already, grooming and sexting, and also live streaming, we also have people who are developing material of children engaged in sexual activity. So you'll find it's a cyber cafe, the way we know it, but back end, there's a lot of activity that is happening.
Okay.
So the children go in there, they are shown pornographic material, then they're asked to act whatever it is they saw. And that is recorded and sold to some audience out there. And it is huge money for the people doing that, the cyber cafe owners and the people involved. Sometimes the children themselves are also paid for that. And because of that, it encourages them to participate. And they are, being children, it's easy to play with their minds. So they are told something like, nobody touched you, they were just looking. And that is where it ended. And you actually made money out of it. So the child is lured very easily. And they're able to therefore recruit other children into the same. So they'll come whisper in your ear, there's this and this happening somewhere, if you could join me next time.
Let's go.
And before long, you have a whole crowd of children who are being exploited in that sense. There's also situations where in a sexual relationship, and children do not have consent, by the way.
Yes.
But in a sexual relationship...
And by children, anyone below the age of 18.
Yes, anyone below the age of 18, even if they say yes, it's not admissible.
A yes.
No, it's not a yes. So anyway, in a sexual relationship, someone records the nudes and videos and things like that. And then they start exploiting the child by threatening them that they will release that material and damage their reputation, for example. And in that sense, they are also able to manipulate them to do other things so that they do not share that content. So they are using that to blackmail the child throughout and for a long period.
Yeah, and it gets them into even more acts. And being children, the guilt might be over something that is not very...
it is true. Or they could even threaten with, I'll kill your loved one, your mom, your siblings, and you're threatened to do even more than what you already did. Yeah. Because you're thinking, well, if this will protect my family, then I will do it. Yeah. I mean, so it keeps growing from one level, which could have been mild, to a very big thing and serious, so to speak.
So to speak. And so this is a country that is very conservative. So you find children have been groomed in a way that they're told, this is basically evil, and so speaking out about this is not something that comes easy. So when you're trying to deal with such a social evil, where do you even start? Because children are not the most outspoken, or they might talk about amongst each other, but not to an adult, because they fear of being castigated, judged, or stigmatized. And if they're being, as you said, exploiting or blackmailed into it, then it's even more difficult. So I imagine this is one of the challenges that we would face in trying to eradicate this. So I'll start with you, Magdalene. What is the approach to this problem?
Yeah, we are tackling this issue, and we are having a project in this consortium where Teredes Homes, AICS, and Childline are running a project. We are calling it Safe Online, and we are tackling the issue through a number of ways, looking first at the prevention. How are we even creating awareness to communities, to children themselves, so that they don't end up into being exploited online? Right. And just telling them this is how you need to prevent this from happening, and also working with communities, especially parents and caregivers, who are also very ignorant, and the level of awareness is very low. In fact, there is that pride of a parent. My son, my daughter can now go into my smartphone and get all these things.
And she's the one who's even teaching me how to use Facebook.
Yes. So there's that, like, we don't know really, the parents are not aware of the risks these children are getting into. So we are creating a lot of awareness on this, just to ensure that they know the risks these children are getting into when they access these mobile phones and all this media, and also trying to ensure they monitor what these children watch. So that is one way we are doing to tackle this issue, and also working with the various actors that we have. We don't work alone, we work with the government, the Department of Children's Services, and also the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, and also the private sector. Who are these internet service providers, the Communication Authority of Kenya, just to ensure that they also committed in terms of coming up with some strategies on how they can address issues of online sexual exploitation. And creating and campaigning, just creating that awareness on the issue. It's on the rise, and these are the issues, and these are the risks and consequences of child who really become victims of sex.
Because it took a while to get over the paranoia of the internet. But at the same time, now that we are more accustomed and we're more accepting of the internet, we're finding that it's a double-edged sword. There are good things and bad things that come with it. So while we are trying to take advantage of the good of the internet, it's not bad for the children to have internet. They can learn, they can catch up on their schoolwork. There's a lot of good that comes with the internet, but there are also the bads that we have outlined right here. So what are some of the practical ways that a parent, before they even get to see the campaign, or what are some of the practical stopgaps that they can put on their devices that could prevent their children from accessing such information? That's
a very good question, and really child protection, or how you really enhance, ensure that your child is safe. The same traditional things will really apply, including on an online platform, in the sense that the first line of defense for a child is the child themselves, being able to appreciate that when I go beyond this, then there is a risk level. And so in this campaign that we are doing, there's been a lot of investment around empowering children to know what is online child sexual exploitation, how do I know that beyond this I'm on the red, and what do I do when that happens. Again, very important, and this we included in our initial research just to understand how big is this problem. And so one of the first things we did was to conduct household research in Mombasa.
And I was about to ask, what is the role of research in actually handling
So we did this in Mombasa, in Nairobi, Nakuru and Kisumu, because these counties have a larger internet penetration. And what we found that most parents were not having a conversation with their children. Just like you've said, many of us think buying a nice tablet to your child as a birthday gift is a good thing. Yes, it is, but if there's no conversation around what then do you open up this to? I find this more like, if you're going to send your child out to the market, assuming you move into a new neighborhood, you really have to tell your children, don't go to this corner, it's dark, don't walk alone at this hour. But we forget that the internet has basically opened a whole new community with a lot of risks. So I think it's very important that there are conversations within that. I want to use a very good example that I got from a friend of mine, that in their household, they have decided that there is no passwords on their phones. Because I think one reason why this is a challenge is we as parents or elder people often also the things we watch maybe are already a problem, So if there are no passwords,
so they access it because you
yourself you're already doing it. So put certain rules in the house. They are not going to be passwords on our phones. We shall use our phones at certain hours. And I should be able to know whom are you communicating with. So in the case of my friend, because she has teenagers, just going to use the phone of her daughter, she realized that the daughter was being asked by the boyfriend to send nude photos of her. And you can imagine what that will be as a repercussion. So we've got to really get back to a point where we're having a conversation between us and our children.
Openness in our society about how the consequences of these things. And now, speaking of consequences, what would it do to a child to be under this sort of abuse that is not physical, but just the online? Psychologically speaking, what does it do to them in terms of how they are mentally, and maybe even their schoolwork and what they're supposed to be as a healthy child? Martha?
looking back at the scenarios that we have already discussed, there's a lot of emotional distress for the child at two levels. One level is that the sexual matters are still very, we shy away from them in the African society, so to speak. And so they already know, they have their conscience that is almost speaking to them that you're doing something wrong.
Yes.
So that in itself is stressing the child. And then there's someone who is threatening them. So that is also distressing in itself. Thirdly, they spend so much time on the internet.
Right.
It goes without saying. We are seeing even ourselves being affected in the social media in that sense. So they have not enough time perhaps to concentrate on their studies, and that obviously affects their performance.
Academics.
Which means they're in conflict with the school authority, they're in conflict with their parents, perhaps with their peers. It could be that some of them are being paid more than others for these activities, again, because they know they're doing this in a crowd. So some are feeling superior than others, and so I am not in the in group, I am in the out group, I need to fit in. There's all this that is playing around the child, and that is distressful in itself.
Yes.
And then there's also the fact that they therefore do not even know. I mean, what then should I do? I am in this situation, all right. Should I talk to my parents? No, I do not want them to know.
Yeah.
Should I talk to my peers? They're already feeling like I am superior or I am inferior, so they want to shy away from that as well. So they're in a position where they don't know how or where to seek help as well. And that causes even more distress in this child. So you find cases of children who are committing suicide.
Going up.
Yes,
Yeah.
and very young children, 8, 9 years, and you're wondering what would push this child to the level where they have to commit suicide. Or you find them being just withdrawn from social life, and they're not participating in the things you would expect them to participate in at that age. You just see there's some disconnect between their age and their situation and the way they're interacting with the community and the society. Or you find them behaving in a certain way around certain people. Say a girl would behave in a certain way around men, and you're thinking that is too mature for your age. Around this group of people. Where did you learn this? Something is not adding up. It's not very clear. And so that also robs the child of their childhood. They start becoming adults too soon, and they're not quite prepared for that level of life. And therefore, when they grow up to become now adults, something is amiss. There's something that did not go quite right in their childhood, and they're unable to adjust to adulthood. So you find people who are struggling even with intimacy in their own marriages because of the way they were socialized into sexuality when they were children. They don't know how to interact with their own children because as they were children, there are things that did not go quite right. They did not have the right guidance, and therefore they just don't know what to do with their children. So you find them abusing their children also as a way of dealing with the situation. So it's bigger than just the here and now for the child.
Now,
it goes beyond.
Magdalene, these are stories you read from international websites about children, well, typically children committing suicide or traveling across the world to join some insurgents because they were told you can come and become my wife and then you can be part of this movement. And these are usually young, very young children. So it is something that we've seen, it's not new. But then I'm curious about the situation in Kenya. Is it that dire? Should we be that worried? And is it to a demographic that is the rich and the moneyed, or is it every child being vulnerable to this?
I think what we've seen, and also from the research, it really pointed to a very great need for interventions on the online sexual exploitation. We've seen like the research really pointed, and also research done by Teredes Homes, the dark side of the internet for children, really pointed quite a number of teenagers accessing internet, and also parents even not aware of what sites and what they are watching in this online. And we've also had cases within the project that we are working, even as you say, children moving from some counties, Kisumu, going to Mombasa, because they met this friend online who promised goodies and come visit me and all that, of course, with the aim of exploiting these girls. We've really seen this is an issue in Kenya. We have had several numbers, over, I think, 200 since the start of the project.
Yes.
And what we have seen is children are really, yes, they feel they have been sexually exploited online, but also there's that aspect of, do I say it?
Yes.
Do I suppose my parents get to know about this? And we, through this counseling, we do tele-counseling of children, of course, through the 116, which is Childline Kenya really holds and supports. So we get to hear children saying, this is happening, my peer or even my friend is being abused, but he or she doesn't want to report this. So we are saying that there's need, and it's rising in Kenya from the figures that we are seeing. And also now what I cited, even with these fueled by the cash transfer system, the M-Pesa, the mobile.
It's
and
easy
now,
to lure them,
yes,
them
yes,
a little money, and they would be convinced.
Yes, so it's really an issue, and we've even heard of even children who are threatened. Like, I will send out this nude photo of yours if you don't comply to what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And we've also had cases of even suicide for some of those, yes, in Kenya.
Because they feel trapped, they don't know what to do.
They don't know what to do, they don't know if they can share with their parents or teachers, or if they will be victimized because they are online, or when they are not supposed to be online, and all that, those kind of things.
Absolutely. So Samuel, this necessitated the work that you do. So could you outline to us or to the Kenyans how they can access help, and obviously what you are doing practically on the ground to ensure that you're putting an end to this, or that it doesn't grow to the levels we've seen in the news abroad and what have you?
Right. So, like I mentioned earlier on, the beginning point is to really empower the children, and through these agencies, through the Department for Children's Services, there are opportunities where you can access information, training, and also, even if you're in a situation where you need help, you can call 116, that is the child line. Kenya, it's a toll-free line, and be able to access a counselor, and they will direct you into where to get help. But beyond that, we also looking at then building systems and capacity. Magdalene has mentioned our work, our collaborations with the Department for Criminal Investigation.
Yes.
And I really want to commend the government that Kenya is, I think, among the few countries in this continent that have set up a full-fledged police unit that are able to track even cases of a child who's, if you've posted your photos, or someone has posted your nude photos online, there's no need to panic. Don't feel like you've got to take away your life because there's nothing can be done. It can actually be pulled down. There are already collaborations with Facebook, NetMec, and the Interpol and the international community, really. To be able to remove cases of where children are there. I also want to point out that within our work, we appreciated the role of policy and legislation in being able to do this. Unfortunately, these have not kept pace.
Yes.
So the laws that we have, like the Sexual Offences Act of 2006, largely did not, I mean, at that point, we didn't appreciate how much risk is there on online child sexual exploitation. But there's a new bill that has been in waiting, and I'm really hoping, and there's a lot of campaign to make sure it is enacted soon, the Children's Bill of 2019. But that really provides many more, provisions within the law that then you can use to also address this matter. The Cyber Offences, Cyber Crimes Act is another very good piece of legislation. Unfortunately, there is almost 26, parts of it that were suspended by the court. So we think there's really an opportunity in some of this being able to be used. But I really want to emphasize also the school-based opportunity, because children spend a lot more time actually, I think, in school than at home. So we are working with schools to be able to provide a curriculum-based training program that enables children to know better and to know what to do.
Absolutely, because children have little communities in those schools, and they influence one another, and they keep secrets. We had that video that made us all shocked, where a kid was uttering very... And some of these things we just learned, not even in movies at home, online, and through interacting with one another. So there's this acronym, SMART. Tell us about it.
The SMART?
Yes.
The expert is here on the smart.
The smart expert.
So I will
It's
not
all
water
about
down his expertise in that sense.
it's all about safe meeting, accepting,
Yes.
reliable, and tell.
tell.
And this is a way of going against online sexual.
And it's much easier for the child to remember that
yes.
acronym.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us about
Yeah,
that.
so I mean, we'll all speak into it, but basically what we're saying is the children need, and this is a conversation we need to have on our dinner tables or wherever it is at family level.
Yes.
The children need to appreciate that what is safe. You know, how do I know that whatever I'm accessing is safe? And knowing that behind there's always someone whose intention is not right. It's not everyone you're talking to who has a good intention.
Yes.
And so children need to be empowered to appreciate that. And as you do that, so that is the S part of it, being safe. Then you need to also know that never meet anyone physically whom you've met. Online.
Yeah.
That is one thing we need to tell everyone. If you don't know them, I will even say, if you know them, then you've still got to meet them in a very safe space.
And possibly involve the parents.
Involve your parents, so that then you don't get into situations where you are compromised into your safety. Then, of course, in terms of EA and just being
Accepting?
Yes, you know, don't just accept any friends. You know, I know it's almost something cool to have so many friends online.
It's definitely.
Indeed, I'm told actually young people are now buying friends
advertising
on
their
Facebook,
accounts.
you know, yes, and trying to have as many. Don't just accept anyone. You've got to really. It's just the same way, like I said, if you have a daily relationship with people, you don't just walk away with someone who says, you know.
Right.
So you've got to be able to know who the other person is. And very importantly, for a young person, please talk to your parent or talk to someone older within your safe space to ask. There's this person they're trying to ask me to communicate with them before you do anything.
Then there's reliable and telling. Yes, so
Exactly,
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Magdalene, we've talked about policy and legislation. Is there anything else that, as a country, we can do to protect our kids?
Yeah, another, I think, action we also need to work is getting on board the private sector, as I said, yes, so that we can also have them commit to ending or combating this issue through even having code of conducts, through having some tools that prevent even sharing of some of these nude images of children, and being also able to help also the government to track some of these perpetrators who are really exploiting children online. So the private sector here is very key, and we are happy even in this collaboration. We have the communication authority, which is a government parastatal, and then we have also internet service providers, we are also trying to bring them on board to see how do we collaborate together, what would be your role and what will be our role, and also how do you support in terms of even identifying some of these perpetrators who are really going unpunished.
Yes, because it's quite a problem tracking down, even with hate speech and other problems. It's quite hard to find that account, and sometimes they don't even use their real names because they know what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah. And also now looking at the technical capacity of all the key stakeholders, because this is a new area in Kenya, as you said, and people don't really know how to go about it and what to do if they get a case of a child who is abused online. Not everyone is aware. So how do we ensure the technical people who are really the duty bearers, who are supposed to protect children from getting into this vice, are aware of the interventions, the support, the response, and the prevention measures to protect children.
Now, I'll throw this one over to you, Martha. If I am a parent or a teacher or just an adult in a certain community, and I notice that this child is not trusting anymore, they have changed the body language, they're showing telltale signs of being exploited in one way or another. Obviously, you might not be able to tell whether it's online or in actual life. So what do I do? What is the first step that I should take?
First step is not to judge. We are very quick to point fingers and say, you see, I told you not to, you know, blah, blah, blah. We should just accept them as they are. It has already happened. We cannot undo. If we are at this point, we are at this point, so how do we deal with it? And it is okay to open up a safe space for the child to speak. Let them talk. and let them talk at their level, the much they can. Don't also push them too hard for more information than they are comfortable telling you. So it's a whole process. You must be very patient with them. So they'll tell you as much as they want to at that point, and then they keep growing it. And as you get this information, then you're able to even explain to the child that it's not their fault. Someone is actually taking advantage of them, and that needs to be dealt with. So that you create a situation of trust where they know, I am safe with this person helping me or working with me through this process. So then you can involve other people. Various actors play different roles. There's the police who will do the investigations, there's the people who will offer the counseling. In case there was offline meetings, you need medication as well, depending on what really happened there. You need to also sensitize sometimes the whole community around the child, say the school or the class, so that they don't victimize them just because of this situation. So they understand some of these risks. It's actually a good opportunity to also train them or create awareness around the issue just because of this particular case. Meanwhile, protecting the child from ridicule and such that could make their lives even more difficult in the school or in the home. And so as you continue working with the child, the counseling should go on throughout, because you don't know today how they will wake up, what emotion will be presenting, what low or high they will be at. And so they need to be managed throughout that way. Then, of course, there's going to court, and you're meeting your perpetrator face to face. How do you deal with that? Thank God sometimes in court we are allowed to have meetings in chamber, so that you don't necessarily have to meet the perpetrator, but you can identify them from a distance. And then you continue with the session and they get sentenced and all. So we take advantage of such opportunities as well, so that the perpetrators don't go scot-free because the victim was too scared
to face them or relive the trauma.
And they keep shutting down every time they need to speak. So we provide those safe spaces for these children. And even after all this has gone by, we need to keep reassuring the child that it is okay and they can live differently. They don't have to revert back to what they were used to, and that it is okay to say no. You know, you just teach them small tips here and there that help them in life. So that is how you work with it. It's not a one-off. You have to, it's a whole process, and you involve different people around the child's life.
And I would also like to bring up the issue of stigma, because while you're trying to get the kid to open up, if you're not the parent, then there's also the convincing the parent to take action, because the community sometimes does not want to own certain ills that are happening. So are there counseling opportunities in today's society that can help both mother and parent come to terms and then now go out to seek justice when they are, the victims in certain situations?
Yes, such opportunities exist. We run the National Child Helpline Service, which is accessible by dialing 116 for free. And the beauty of it is that it is anonymous. So you do not have to reveal your identity. We can still support you in all the anonymity that is involved without knowing who you are or where you are. And as we help the child exists within a community. So we don't shut out the rest of the community just because we're dealing with a child. So we'd also work with the parent in that sense. Also, if they want to be anonymous, it's fine. We still give them the services that way within their safe space. And when they are ready, we can bring them together and now deal with the therapy around the family therapy as we call it, or community therapy, where you involve more people to support the child and the family.
And on that note, I would like to call it a discussion. Thank you so much for joining us for that discussion. Michael, if you would join us as we conclude the show. It has been very informative. We started off on the economy, we wound up on helping children who might be on the receiving end of sexual exploitation, particularly in this day and age of social media.